Hey, Trinity Grace, it's Michael Castillejos. Excited to be with you guys today. I'd like to share with you a passage from the book of Mark that was in the lectionary a few days back. It's one of my favorites. It's from Mark chapter 4, picking up in verse 35. You might hear some sounds. I'm outside. Figured we all could use some sunshine. Okay, so this is Mark 4:35. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." And I've always loved that passage. I especially love it now. My daughter's pretty fond of it. This is the illustration from the Jesus Storybook Bible. I just love it. Jesus is out. He's so asleep. His hands are folded on his chest. It's great. She always opens right to this one and wants to read this story. But I think, just a few thoughts that I had on that passage. I've always been haunted by this question the disciples answer, or the disciples ask. They say, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" And as I read that the other day, I just felt this invitation from God to use this moment that we're all in as an opportunity to ask God those questions. I love, especially in the Psalms, that it doesn't seem like God's afraid of us asking questions like that. I think it's pretty natural in moments like these to try to deal with the challenges that we all have of, hey, how am I going to get food, or what's work, or finances, things like that. And we can ignore some of those deeper questions. I just want to encourage you all to take time to get with God with that question of, hey, where are you? Don't you care that we're going to drown? I think at some level we've probably all had days in this where we felt that sense of being alone, or not seen, or abandoned, or whatever it might feel like for you. And I want to encourage you to sit with it, and not to sit alone with it, but to bring it to God in the reality of how you're experiencing it. But following from that, I think it's really interesting that Jesus wakes up and does not answer the question. They ask him, "Don't you care if we drown?" And you might think that the text would say, "Of course I care. Of course, I'm with you." And that was probably certainly true, and certainly in Jesus' heart. But just maybe normalizing this experience of asking those questions, and maybe feeling like God responds in a way that other than what you would expect. In this particular instance, I think it's great. Jesus gets up, he calms the storm, and he answers their question with a question. Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? And that was haunting for me when I first read it last week, and it's haunting every time I've read it since. And it's very logical for the disciples to be a lot afraid. Many of them were sailors, and presumably the storm was pretty scary for them. But I feel there's something powerful in that question. Do you still have no faith? I think the disciples' answer to that says in verse 41, they were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." And I feel like throughout this whole passage and throughout this whole moment that we're in, I think there's this opportunity for us to ask that question in response to the questions that we might ask preliminarily is, who is this? And that I believe that this storm's an opportunity to get better acquainted with who God is, not in some, in a shallow way that might be possible when everything is rosy, when everything that you want, you get right when you want it. There's this opportunity to get to see who God really is in moments of trial and uncertainty. And I wonder if in that question, why are you so afraid? Do you have no faith? I wonder if there's this sense of, not only is Jesus saying like, hey, why are you so afraid? Do you still not have any faith? I'm with you. Like, I made all of this. I'm in control. I'm still in control, which is certainly there. I just wonder if maybe there's this sense too where Jesus's question is like, hey, why are you so afraid? You're here, and I've given you what you need to confront this challenge. It's like, I just wonder if Jesus is like, have you not learned by now that I have made you something more than what you used to be, to his disciples and maybe to us in this moment? What is it like for us to say, what if this is our moment to say, God has brought us to this moment to be more than what we could naturally be? And I've spoken to many people in our church. I think we're all feeling that of saying, okay, Lord, I want to join you and believe for the kingdom of God to come in even times such as these. What does it look like to continue to believe all the promises that God has ever spoken to you, all the promises that maybe you started out 2020 with a list of things like, this is what I'm believing God for. What does it look like to continue to believe everything that you've ever written in a journal or life verses that you feel are yours? What does it mean to still trust that that's true? Every verse you've ever seen cross-stitched on a thing, that God has promises for you. Jeremiah 29:11. What does it mean to still believe in that? To still have faith for all of the goodness and faithfulness of God in this moment. And I think that might be a challenge for us to continue to believe that we're still a church, even though we can't meet, to believe that God's promises for us to be a people of joy. It's all still true. So, wish we could be together. Wish I could hug you all. That's the hardest part. I'm a hugger, and I can't hug anybody. But I hope you're all well. I love you all and hope to see you soon.